patient advocates and patients who are here today, that was part of the strategic planning process, and comments from that are incorporated into this plan. We met with every major research institution in the state of California in preparation for this. We met with industry stakeholders. We had conversations, obviously, with the board. So, and then the internal CIRM team has been intimately involved with this. So this process is one that's evolved over a period of time, and has taken input from really every source that was interested in participating. So really quickly about the strategic planning process, I've talked about this a couple of times. There's a lot of ways to do this that are really complex and sometimes overly complex and burdensome. To have a successful plan, though, you really only need three things. The first thing you need to do is establish where you are now. That requires an honest assessment of the environment that you're actually in, how that environment's changed. You have to confront facts, sometimes brutal facts. You have to be very honest about that. That process ends with really understanding the mission of the agency and making sure that we're all aligned around that. So once you know where you are, then you get into where you want to go. And this is where you come up with a vision of what great looks like. And there's different ways of doing that, and brainstorming and benchmarking and a lot of different things. But come up with a mission that describes where you want to go. And then the last part is simply figuring out the best way to get there. Once you know where you are and where you want to go. And that's where the strategy part of strategic planning comes in. And so I'll be going through these three things today with regards to CIRM's strategic plan. The first thing we'll start with this concept of where are we. A really important aspect to understand for CIRM is its financial life and its funding runway. So the amount of awards that CIRM has to give over its entire life was about $2.75 billion. We have awarded about $2 billion of that already. We have $775 million that's not committed. We have a plan that will call for about $190 to $200 million in new awards every single year for the next 5 years. As part of that, we estimate that sometimes when we issue an award, the project doesn't work out and we get some of that money back. And that happens in the rate of about 10 to 15% of every dollar that we award comes back to CIRM in an award reduction or modification. So therefore, our net spending would be about $170 million, and so that's how you get to $775 million in uncommitted funds that will last 5 years when allocated at the rate of $190 to $200 million a year. So 5 years is our realistic time, right? There's realistic 4.5 years is our realistic award time horizon, and so this plan takes a look at how CIRM can do the best it possibly can and achieve the most it can achieve in that time period. Today, we have spent or awarded $1.3 billion on disease-specific research. This is across all kinds of funding, from the earlier stage research, translational research, to clinical stage research. That has given us now 15 clinical trials, and you can see the clinical trials listed. And you can also see the makeup of our disease-specific funding. So neuro is by far the largest, followed by cancer and cardiovascular, and you can see the remaining areas. We have been, to date, we have been overwhelmingly funding academic versus industry to the tune of 91% to 9%. I'll say if you looked at this without any context, that might seem a little overwhelming. It's not quite that overwhelming, given that a lot of our programs that we funded, particularly early on, major facilities and the like, only had an opportunity to go to academia. With that said, about 20% of our clinical programs right now are through industry, 80% are still in academia. The reason this is important is because as CIRM moves further and further along in developing these stem cell therapies, it will ultimately be industry that we will need to be partnered with to be able to deliver them to patients. So academia is very good in the early translational, even early clinical stages, but companies commercialize things, and that enables us to go from treating individuals to entire populations of patients. And it's been very clear up until now that there's been an industry bias against getting involved in stem cell therapy. So moving on to where we are today, we've spent a total of $2 billion, as I've said, and we've spent them on our sort of 5 pillars. Our 5 major initiatives. So we have infrastructure programs like the Alpha Clinics, the Genomics Center, the IPS Cell Bank. We have educational programs, spent $370 million on educational activities. And then we have our discovery, translational, and clinical pieces that you can see up there. The point of this, and this is a really, really important point and a major shift that's going to be going on at CIRM, is we have created, with these $2 billion, very beautiful pieces, but they've existed as pieces, not as an integrated machine. And so that's one of the things that we're going to be changing. So you can just take a look back through our history. CIRM has existed as an initiative-based agency. And what I mean by that is that earlier on in CIRM's lifespan, when CIRM started and it was starting to get going, there wasn't tremendous demand for discovery, translational, and clinical stage research. Actually, there wasn't that much demand for any stem cell research. The field was still very young. And so what the agency would do in order to be as responsive as it possibly could would be, once there was critical mass around a particular area, it would offer an initiative. An initiative would essentially pop up, and then you could apply for that initiative. The problem with that, though, is you wouldn't know when that initiative would pop back up again, if ever.